Right now at 6, it's not over yet. Rain meets ice as parts of our region struggle to warm up.
I guess the best way to just be cracking like this, but you know, after a while it starts to hurt.
Plus another cold, wet night as emergency shelters close their doors.
That's pretty rotten. I mean, a lot of people were dispersed and displaced.
And snow days keep piling up.
I have no idea how PPS is going to make up these hours.
So when will we get past the problems and have students back in the classroom?
Good evening, everyone. On another day of wet, cold, and generally miserable conditions across much of our area. Right now, it is 34 degrees in the Rose City with a slow and steady thaw. That still hasn't been enough to break up the ice in some spots. And we've just learned TriMet has once again suspended all MAX service. Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Tim Gordon. It was a week ago tonight that we were waiting for the winter weather to arrive, and now it seems like it'll never leave. Many school districts, again, canceling or delaying start times tomorrow. Those are at the bottom of your screen.
Imagine that list is going to grow. So let's get right to team coverage tonight here. We're keeping an eye on highways and side streets. We also have new details about the tragic deaths of 3 young people killed by a downed power line. But first, we want to check in with Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino. Matt.
Thanks so much, Tim. Yeah, things aren't really getting a lot better. They're not getting a lot worse, but we are getting additional power outages and some additional icing as well. It's 35 degrees at the airport. Temperature's actually gone up a degree in the last hour, which is nice to see, but several locations at 32, 31 King City, 31 in southeast Portland. It's 27 up in Happy Valley. Some pretty good icing going on up there. 33 at Sherwood. So again, we're hovering right around freezing. That's not keeping things from icing up, though, once you get off the ground. Up above the ground, it gets a little bit colder, so that's why we're seeing icing going on trees and bushes and power lines, branches, your car windshields, walkways and railway, guardrails, all that. See the freezing rain pattern here, and it almost follows the east wind exactly. You see it kind of funneling out of the gorge and spreading out along the west hills, and then also spreading out along the coast range there just a bit, too. The good news is you can see the precipitation is beginning to end down around Salem and to our south and to our west. So we will see the rain end, and that means the freezing rain is going to end later on tonight, but there will still be some additional icing as long as we're getting rain falling from the sky, right? We will stay in the 30s right on through Friday. Saturday will finally jump into the 40s. Pretty confident that'll finally happen then. Areas of freezing rain tonight. Again, icing mainly on elevated surfaces, but that said, the side roads, the back roads, the smaller roads are all still very slippery and still very icy because we haven't really melted what we've gotten in the last week. And that east wind will continue to blow for a couple more days. Guys?
Feels like a slog tonight. Thank you, Matt. Let's talk about the Gorge now and check in with Ashley Graham. She is live in Troutdale.
Yeah, Ashley, it's been a long day, to say the least, for truckers trying to head east. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, we're just off 84 here in Troutdale. This is the exit many drivers are using to chain up. You can see this semi here behind me, and conditions not getting much better today. It's cold, it's windy, it's rainy. We talked to a few drivers today to see how they're coping with this weather. The Columbia River Gorge is under an ice storm warning until Friday.
It's kind of crazy out here in Troutdale.
Much of that wind and ice heavily impacting Troutdale as drivers enter the gorge.
They clean up our roads a bit and they put some salt on them, but it's still slippery out here and there. So
Dan Koryagan trying to reclaim his car after it was encased in ice.
I guess the best way to just be cracking like this, but after a while it starts to hurt.
But for those heading east, dozens of semi-trucks prepare for the drive through Hood River. I-84 is back open after a nearly 30-hour closure, but drivers still dealing with extreme weather, many chaining up here on the side of the highway.
No, I don't think anybody ever really gets used to it, but you just have to deal with it when it comes.
Chris Endermill is an experienced truck driver crossing the gorge almost every week. He says chains are important during this stretch of the journey.
It's pretty bad between here and Cascade Locks, I'm sure. So they're necessary evils.
The Oregon Department of Transportation is using sand, salt, de-icer, and plows, trying to keep this major east-west highway drivable, but most of all, safe. Endermill says one of his biggest worries is other drivers, not the road itself.
We got a lot of new drivers on the road these days, but there's only one way to learn, that's to do it. hopefully nobody gets hurt while they're learning. The school of hard knocks is kind of rough.
Now we're hearing about some pretty heavy delays. If you do decide to head east on 84 tonight, I would not recommend it, but it could take you much longer than normal. Some drivers have added 3 hours to their trip through the Gorge. And then also, if you do decide to chain up, make sure you get off the highway. You're not in any kind of travel lane, and you do that in an area that's safe. Live in Troutdale, I'm Ashley Grams, KGW News.
Oh, what a mess out there. Ashley, thanks a lot for being out there for us. Let's switch now to Catherine Cook in Drive 8 in southeast Portland.
And Catherine, you're checking out road conditions once again tonight, but also seeing a lot of new power outages. So walk us through exactly where you are and what you're seeing.
That's right, David. So tonight we are in Pleasant Valley. That's in southeast Portland. Let me go ahead and switch the camera for you, and we can rev up our Drive 8 and take you for a little ride here. So what we're seeing on the ground, first off, a lot of ice, slush over the last hour as temperatures have continued to drop. What was kind of slushy earlier has now hardened up, and it's a bit of a bumpy ride in these untreated surface streets. And then if we swing around right here, you can see what we were talking about. There's a crew right there. You may be able to see some of their utility light trucks. They are working hard. I tell you what, guys, we've been driving around the Pleasant Valley and Happy Valley areas over the last hour and a half, and they have been responding to power outage after power outage. We even saw a couple of the telltale blue lights of transformers blowing up earlier. We saw 2 of those. And sure enough, the dot shows up on the outage map, and there they go. They're off to another one. So it's just, you know, a lot of neighbors out here have power, but you turn around and you go on another street and the street lights are down and nobody has power on that area. So it's kind of hit or miss, basically. But back to the driving conditions, though, out here in southeast and really in all of East Multnomah County, we've got, you know, temperatures dropping, we've got a little bit of rain, a little bit but nothing like we've seen over the last couple of days. But obviously, as you saw, Ashley, it's just really hit or miss in East Multnomah County. Some spots are getting hit really hard, others are still thawing out, and like you guys have been seeing, the big problem, especially in this area. We'll send it back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Catherine. Missed a few words there, but we get the idea. And now to your headlines and exactly what Catherine was just showing us, those power outages going back up again. Right now, PGE is reporting more than 20,000 customers without power in Oregon. That's up from around 8,000 at the same time yesterday. Earlier today, PGE said they'd restored power to 96% of customers, but new outages have been popping up throughout the afternoon and evening now. There are also a handful of new reports of power lines down over roads in Portland, so please keep an eye out for that. Now, Clark County Public Utilities has fewer than 200 customers without power, less than half the number as 24 hours ago. And outside the metro area, just over 10,000 Pacific Power customers remain without electricity after 2 rounds of freezing rain in the Willamette Valley and out at the coast, slightly down from yesterday.
It just keeps going. Let's talk about the roads now. For the most part, it seems drivers are just dealing with what you saw there with Catherine. Wet, slushy pavement. That's the case on most busier roads. But as soon as you get off those main arteries onto the untreated neighborhood streets, you might still encounter patches of ice, especially true in East County up in the west and southwest hills. There are also new reports, as Tim mentioned, of fallen trees that have closed some additional roads this evening.
And on the transit side of things, TriMet has just again suspended all Max Line service. The Blue Line was running on part of its route, but no more. TriMet says the wind and new freezing rain are the challenges right now. Shuttle buses are running between those Max stations, but they're limited, so riders are told to expect long delays. Most regular bus routes are running tonight as well, and some streetcar service has come back online. The North-South line is running its full route, but A and B streetcars, well, they're turning around at Southeast Stevens.
Still a mess, especially in the east wind. Okay, from railways to runways, where both main runways at PDX are once again operational tonight. Despite that, flight cancellations and delays are still adding up. The board, a sea of red. By early this afternoon, almost 100 flights had already been canceled. It's worth noting a handful of these are because of the 737 MAX 9 grounding and not the weather. If you're flying tonight or tomorrow, check your flight status, parking availability, and allow plenty of extra time to get to the airport safely.
We have seen the deadly consequences of this dangerous weather with 5 suspected hypothermia deaths in the metro area since Saturday. Though tonight, warming centers remain closed in Multnomah County. Many spent Wednesday night soaking wet in tents and sleeping bags. Today, the county declared a cold weather advisory and for 3 hours opened a few places for people to pick up cold weather gear. Homeless day centers we checked with say this has left them searching for places to put people.
I think this is indicative of a much greater problem. We shouldn't be scrambling like this in inclement weather. It is winter in Oregon. These beds should be available all the time, all year round.
Now, when we asked the city if they could open emergency shelters on their own, they told us it's really not their call to make, and they have to wait for the county to make those decisions.
All right, some of the details of this next story are awfully disturbing. Let's bring in John Adams now in downtown Portland with an update on a family tragedy we first told you about on Wednesday. It's one that involves a young and humble hero who saved a 9-month-old baby.
John, 3 people, including a brother and sister, died when a live power line came down on their car on Thursday. This is just such a tough thing. How's the family doing?
Yeah, guys, I spoke with a family friend today who says the family is still processing this terrible tragedy.
My mind is somewhere else right now. It's just hurt that I can't see my kids die and can't do nothing about it.
That was Ronald Briggs just hours after he tragically lost his 21-year-old daughter, Taja Lee, 15-year-old son, Tehran, and his daughter's boyfriend, Nash. Taja was also 6 months pregnant. A down power line landed on their SUV, and when they got out, they were electrocuted. Nash was holding his 9-month-old son in his arms, and miraculously, the young boy survived. A neighbor who saw what was happening grabbed the 9-month-old.
So I crouched down, I kind of slid, I used my hands to break my fall, and I didn't land on top of his father, but I kind of my hands landed on top of him. And I just grabbed the baby, I pulled him up, I was swaddling him, and I walked him up the hill.
Briggs told us about his son Tehran, who was a sophomore at Milwaukee High School.
Good student, good football player, good basketball player. He didn't like when people didn't like him, want to be around him. He just wanted to be friends with everybody.
With winter weather continuing to impact the area, we spoke with an expert on what to do if you encounter a downed power line.
Any downed power line could be live and dangerous. It's hard to distinguish what type of line, whether it's a telecommunication line or an actual energy power line or electricity power line. And any sort of contact with a down electric power line that's live can be fatal.
For Briggs, it's almost impossible to process how a regular day could so quickly turn tragic.
And it just hurts right now. I'm just lost right now. I had 6 kids, I lost 2 of them in one day. So it's just hard right now.
Well, the 18-year-old Majaya Washington that jumped in to save the day, we heard from her during a press conference today, and I asked her, because a lot of people have been calling her a hero, I asked her, Majaya, do you feel like you are a hero? She said she doesn't see it that way and thinks that anyone in her situation would have done the same thing. And I also want to report that we heard that 9-month-old Namir is doing well and is going to be out of the hospital today, guys.
Thank goodness for that. You know what? Still heroism out of tragedy. Thank you, John. Tonight, our coverage of the wintry weather continues. Up next, we hear from parents with kids in Portland Public Schools wondering how all of these days are going to be made up.
Dad, coming up on the story at 6:30, Pat Doris will feature some of your thoughts on his one-on-one interview with Multnomah County DA Mike Schmidt. Plus, investigative reporter Evan Watson has new data on ambulance response times around the metro region and how a new strategy is helping neighboring counties, but not being used here in Portland. Details ahead on the story.